lights down, please?
Light dimmed up.
Konja velakattu koikkinga. So many of us have this wonderful thing inside the top of our heads, and I think that most of us are not really putting it to full use. And it's not because we don't want to, but sometimes we don't know how to. So maybe we'll know better. See, when the human evolved, we went from walking on 4 limbs, just like the animals. That's what our original habitus was. Then after about 3 developments or evolutions, we became erect. Then the next step was that our arms became less crude, they became shorter, the thumb became opposable, and we could use the hand for making tools. And another development which happened was the face changed. The chin went smaller and the skull got bigger. Because what happened was the brain began to get bigger as we went from this to this. So if you look at the way the skull changed in shape, you'll find that 3.5 million years ago we had a small brain. The skull was small, elongated, we had a big jaw and face, protuberant face. Then as time went on, look what has happened. From 600 ml of blood of the brain in the skull, it became 1400 cc, the total volume of the brain. And so the skull also changed its shape in order to accommodate this larger brain. Now this enlargement of the brain was mostly in a part of the brain called the cerebral cortex. And that is why the cerebral cortex is called the neocortex or the new brain. Okay? You need to have these basics to really follow what's happening. So the human brain is also a very greedy organ. Though it's only 2% of the body weight, it consumes 20% of the blood that is supplied in the body. So this suggests also, when a structure in the body or an organ in the body consumes a lot of blood, that means it's also expending a lot of energy. So it is a very active organ in the human body, and it needs this blood in order to just function, just do its basic functions. We are not talking about anything fantastic. So when you start doing something fantastic with your brain, you tend to consume still more of the oxygen capacity of the water supply. And then if you look at the brain size and the neuron count, what I want you to observe is mainly the human brain and the African bush elephant brain. You'll find that the weight of the human brain is about 1232 grams. But it has got 16.3 billion neurons in it. But look at that of the elephant. The elephant's brain is huge, much bigger, 2848 grams. But the number of neurons in it are only 5.59. So this makes us unique. And if you see, we have gone from the rhesus monkey to the western gorilla to the human. You see the way we have multiplied the number of neurons that we have. And this also explains why evolutionarily our brains got bigger. Now is having a big brain a sign of intelligence? Men's brains, by the way, are bigger than women's brains. Okay. They are in size. I didn't say anything else. I only said the size is bigger. And there is a lot of skepticism and lot of theories among anthropologists, scientists, neuroscientists, etc. as to how we are going to evolve. And then with technology playing such a huge role in our lives, we are looking at maybe biohumans who will have, tech humans, sorry, who will have their biological self with technical things also put into it. So maybe we will look something like that, we don't know. Where we have some metal things sticking out of us, some other technical things working in us, we're not sure. if that is the next stage of evolution. One of the anthropologists called Dr. Skinner said, the way we are heading with global warming, one of these things may happen to us. We may end up in a water world where all else goes because the glaciers are melting at a rapid speed. So we're going to have a flooding, a lot of water. We know what flooding is. And then what's going to happen to the human is, in evolution what happens is, we naturally adapt to what challenges we face in the environment. So Dr. Skinner is predicting that we'll start having web feet and web hands in a water world. He's also suggesting that in an ice age, which might happen the other extreme, if we get into an ice age, we're going to be like the central figure, big made, very pale in color, and with a big jaw. And if we end up inhabiting another planet, we may develop opposable thumbs in the feet, making our feet as efficient as our hands. So these are all just postulations, but it was interesting that such thoughts are going on in scientific circles. This is just a female version of that. And what was very interesting is, one of the things which actually sped up the development of the brain and the increase in the size of the brain was when the human knew how to, he discovered fire and he started cooking. He started putting meat on the fire, making it softer, easier for him to eat. Earlier to that, like an animal, he would have to eat everything raw. Okay? And so the caveman diet was raw diet. And then when they discovered fire, they started cooking. And there is clear scientific evidence. We are not sure why and how this is related. But when the humans started cooking, the rapid increase in brain size took place. And from Homo habilis to Homo erectus to Homo sapiens is the 3 stages of evolution when we already became erect. And we started walking on 2 legs instead of going about on 4 legs. So this was a rapid rise in the brain size. And that is why the skull and the brain adapted at that time and became what it is today. So a large brain packed with neurons is essential for higher intelligence. But it's not enough. No matter how big the human brain grew, there had to be a corresponding adaptation in the body. Otherwise this wouldn't have happened. And what was the adaptation that took place in the body? We started walking on 2 feet, the bipedalism, and that made our hands free for using tools, for making fires and for hunting. The second thing that happened to our bodies is we developed terrific manual dexterity. We became very facile with using our hands for making small things, big things, whatever. And we also developed a vocal tract that allowed us to speak and sing. Which in monkeys, they have a sense of language, they have a sense of grammar in monkeys, especially in the chimpanzee, but they don't have language and the ability to speak. Therefore, you cannot trace human intelligence to a single organ. And no matter how large the brain grew, intelligence is not only the brain. It is much larger than the brain. So there is a bodily intelligence and there is a close link between the brain developing and the adaptations that the body makes in order to make that brain more efficient. Why this is very important is, in modern terms, when you look at what the brain does, when we say that when you're feeling very depressed, how do most of us sit? Like this, isn't it? But have you noticed that people will come and tell you, hey, if you're feeling bad, just stand up straight, I say. And you feel better. If you stand up straight, when you throw your shoulders back and stand up straight, especially when you're feeling blue or down, you begin to feel better. So there is a clear emotional memory link between the brain and that is why when in communication, body language is so important. Your voice may be saying something, but your body may be saying something entirely different. So the body language is not just some fancy thing which management gurus are telling everybody they should pay attention to, etc. It is a very real scientific link to what your brain is doing. and what your communication is doing. Now this is the human brain, and it's got various parts of the brain which actually has specific functions. Now each part of the brain has got some specific functions. And if you look here, I don't know if this will work from, yeah. Now if you look, this red area that you see, it says motor cortex, sensory cortex. This is the most important part of the cerebral cortex. It is present on both sides. The right side of the brain controls the left half of the body. Left side of the brain controls the right half of the body. And that is where your movement, motor is the movement, and all the way ability to feel sensation is present. So that is called the sensory motor strip. Then you see what is behind that. There is something called the parietal lobe. Now the parietal lobe is where we process sensations. So we know fine sensations. When we touch a piece of silk, when we touch a piece of velvet, when we touch a cotton or something hard, that distinction that we are able to make is because of the parietal lobe. Then of course you've got the occipital lobe that is at the back. The chief function of the occipital lobe is vision. Okay? And then you have the temporal lobe. The temporal lobe, its chief function is hearing. And you have the frontal lobe, whose chief function is what makes us different from animals. Reasoning, judgment, intellect, all these higher thoughts are what you have. Now we need to know how the brain became the way it is. And if you look at this part of the brain, that's called the lower brain or the hind brain, it is called the cerebellum. Now this structure is responsible for, if I want to touch this, the smooth movement of my going and reaching there needs my cerebellum. I may have the motor area have given me the strength in my hand to do it. But to coordinate it, make it smooth and go there, I need the cerebellum to be intact. Then you see this part of the brain called the pons and the medulla. That is called the brain stem. Now in evolution, we will see now how this brain stem, the cerebellum, the cerebral cortex, etc. made a change. This is called the triune brain. Now in this, if you see, the first brain that developed evolutionarily was the reptilian brain. This is the primitive brain. Now this primitive brain only enabled us to have survival, aggression and escape. So fight and flight. There was no, if some predator came and tried to attack, all I knew was I had to save myself and run away. Or at that stage even fight was not such an issue. So this is your chameleon, your lizard, your snake, all of these are reptiles. So the main function was survival. So all the essential things for digestion, for excretion, for reproduction, all those were well developed in this level of the brain. And the brain was at that level. It was nothing better than that. The next stage of evolution, the second layer came, called the mammalian brain. Now this mammalian brain brings emotions into play. This brain is capable of registering and showing emotion. A mammal is any animal which does not lay eggs, but which delivers live young. So dog, cat, lion, tiger, all of these are mammals. So they give birth to living young, not eggs. The lower level they give birth through eggs. Now this is an emotional brain. Now in the human brain, this layer is what represents the brain stem I showed you. So it's about survival. Your brain stem regulates your blood pressure, your temperature, your pulse, your respiration, everything. So when your brain stem is knocked off, that is when we say you are brain dead. So the rest of the brain may be still intact and functioning, but the vital things that you need for living are knocked off. So sometimes the heartbeat will be there, but the person will be brain dead because there is no communication between the top and the bottom. Okay? The second layer in the human is represented by what is called as the limbic system. Now the limbic system is the emotional brain in you and me. It is capable of expressing anger, love, empathy, the consideration and compassion. All of that comes from the limbic system. But the limbic system is a reactive brain. Meaning, if there's a stimulus, it will respond to that stimulus in a reactive fashion. Now you come and, if he gets up and slaps me, my limbic system will make me slap him back. Okay? That's a reactive brain. It won't analyze. Is it okay? Why did he slap me? All that won't come. So for that you need the next brain, which is the primate brain or the neocortex I told you, which is the reasoning brain. Now that reasoning brain, that neocortex, in the human is represented by the cerebral cortex. And what did I tell you? Evolutionarily, as we progressed, the cerebral cortex got bigger and bigger. So our ability to develop a proactive brain, which will analyze, which will assimilate, which will store, which will, recall, all of this has come from the cerebral cortex. So in the neocortex, you have thoughts, meanings, logic, associations, feelings about feelings, etc. In the limbic system, you have simple emotions. In the brainstem, it's fight or flight, automatic functions, appetite, etc. And if you look at the behavioral correlates of the triune brain, you will find that probably our deep innate sense of love may be at the brainstem level itself. But the feeling that we have of love is from the limbic system. And from the neocortex, it is intellect. Okay, this is just, it's a very simple way of saying it, but that will help you to remember. Then we have another ability, our brain has another ability known as neuroplasticity. Now what is neuroplasticity? It is the ability of the brain to change in response to changes in the environment. And that is what has been happening to our brains for millions of years. As the environment changed, we changed. As our bodies adapted, as the brain changed. And so that is what all that is called neuroplasticity. But now in the developed human brain as we know it, what is neuroplasticity? We thought it was only what is known as development in neuroplasticity, which we see in young children. How does a helpless baby from zero at birth become by the age of 3 or 4 or 5 a walking, talking, efficient human? That is because there is neuroplasticity which is developing the brain from 0 to 5 years. So neuroplasticity also comes into play when you have a damage to the brain. There is a repair process. That is called neuroplasticity. But it's possible also for me to train my brain in such a way that certain environment, like in children now we are recommending in schools, the Montessori method for instance, there is a lot of environmental stimulation and those children's brains develop better. But at the same time, if you are environmentally starved, emotionally starved, like orphan children or children of war who are made orphans in war areas, they have undergone a lot of trauma, mental trauma, and they are not looked after, and they are not nurtured or fed, or they are not really taken care of. These children, even if they have a certain IQ, the intelligence will not develop because there isn't any. It's what is known as an environmental starvation that's taking place. There was an experiment they did with monkeys. What they showed was that the maternal, especially in mammals, we are like all of us in mammals and primates, the young ones are dependent on the parent for a long time. It's not that soon after birth they can manage on their own. They need the mother for some time to support them. So when we look at that, what happens is that we see that there is neuroplasticity. If the mother nurtures the child well, takes care of the child, loves the child, you find that those brains develop better. Which is why when many of the younger people who talk to me or come to me say to me, "I'm sorry ma'am, I gave up my career for my child, and things like that, I tell them you don't have to be sorry, you have to be happy you did it. Because 0 to 5 years, the child needs the mother. And as many mothers, what you do then is what determines how this child is going to grow up in later life. So if there are any young people here who are having young children, please don't feel bad about giving up everything else to be with your child. So after a stroke, the brain can reorganize itself, because today that's an issue, career versus your young one. And yet, because of the lifestyles that we lead, we don't make full use of our brains. Now, to show that adaptations of the brain can occur by environment, there are some people called the Mokans. They are in Myanmar and Thailand, and they have amazing underwater vision, which has been developed by them by constricting their pupils. So they are able to constrict their pupils in a peculiar way, which is sometimes seems superhuman, but they have amazing underwater vision. They don't wear anything, no scuba gear, nothing. They just jump in and they are able to find things underwater. Also the London taxi drivers, their brains have been studied with fMRIs, MRI, regular PET scans, etc. And it was found that the part of the brain which is responsible for visuospatial information, how to navigate a place, how to find your way around, is much larger. It's called the hippocampus, and it's much larger than in the bus driver. See, the bus driver goes by the same route every day. The taxi driver, every trip he takes is a different route. And so his brain is challenged much more. And this is giving us a message. What is it telling us? That the more you use your brain for different things, the better your brain is going to get. So don't just follow it. Routines are good, they're practical. But don't always stay in a rut. In fact, some of the challenges which they tell you how to improve yourself is they say practice doing things with your other hand. Like for instance, brush your teeth with your left hand instead of your right hand. These are all things which actually challenge your brain to develop better. And you must understand the neuroplasticity. It gives us a brain which can adapt not only to damage, but it also adapts to all experiences and changes that we may encounter. So as your brain changes, your mind changes. And as your mind changes, your brain changes. So remember, the thoughts we think can change the structure of our brain. So your neurons that fire together when you're thinking tend to wire together. And what you think about can change the structure of your brain. Now this is probably the most important slide in the entire presentation. Your mind is so powerful that it can make your brain a better structure. That's the main take-home message. So you can use your mind to change your brain and change your mind for the better. Now this is called self-directed neuroplasticity. So you don't need the environment to do it for you. You can self-direct neuroplasticity. And so how do we do this in skillful ways? So you must understand that the human is basically, when the human is not threatened, when you're not ill, you're not in pain, you're not hungry, you're not upset, you're not disturbed chemically with alcohol or drugs or anything. The basic nature is to be peaceful, happy and loving. That is the basic nature of the human. Only thing is, we are saying it scientifically, Dalai Lama is saying it spiritually. And so are many of our spiritual leaders. So the peaceful system is the avoid system. I want no trouble, I just stay calm, mind my own business, be happy. The happy is the approach system. I try to seek out certain things which will make me happy. And loving is the attach system. I attach myself to something and I get joy and pleasure out of that. So what happens? I have wisdom and contentment. So I have peace, happiness, love, and I have an avoid, approach, attach kind of relationship. Now this is called the responsive mode. And this responsive mode is from which part of the brain? The cerebral cortex. Okay? But how to cope with, when we have to cope with certain stresses, that is our home base. We leave home. How do we leave home? When do we sort of disturb the avoid balance? When we feel threatened or harmed. The approach balance, when we go after we drive ourselves about important goals and we don't get them, then we get upset. Attached, when you feel isolated, disconnected, unappreciated, you feel alone, then that is disturbed, that status is disturbed. Now the brain has become reactive. It's gone to limbic system. So I function from the gut. I don't function reasonably. So you get into, and what it does is it leads you to ignorance and suffering. The gut is very good when you think of it as intuition. But when I'm just going through life like that, you know, plodding along as it were, I don't get any fun out of life. So, how can we actively internalize resources into implicit memory? Now what you need to understand is, in the brain there is something called the negativity bias. The brain naturally recognizes the negative. The reason why it does that is because it's protective. See, unless I know there's a lion there going to attack me, and I have the fear of that lion attacking me, I'm not going to protect myself against potential harm. So this is there, it's a natural thing in the brain. And that all of us will understand that if something goes well whole of today, and one thing goes wrong, everything goes well but one thing goes wrong. When you go to bed, what sticks in your mind? The one thing that went wrong. That's because of the negativity bias of the brain. So what you should try to do is, make your positive experiences stick to you like Velcro. And all your negative experiences should be like Teflon, non-stick pan. Okay? So just having a positive experience is not enough. Because they pass through see, supposing the brain is a sieve, the positive experiences just go off down quickly. So you have to work on perpetuating your positive experience if you really want to change the structure of your brain. So you need to engage the positive experience actively and weave it into the brain. So the negativity bias, I already told you, negative stimuli get more attention and processing. We generally learn faster from pain than we do from pleasure. Agreed? Everybody is quite agreeable on that. People work harder to avoid a loss than to get a gain. Yes? Easy to create learned helplessness. What is learned helplessness? Sometimes when a person is sick, for instance, they get into learned helplessness. I am sick, everybody is paying attention to me now. So even when I get better, I say, okay, I enjoyed that attention. Let me continue to be helpless. Let somebody do things for me. Let somebody help me like that. So we have to, actually when we are doing our service projects, we need to remember that among the poor sometimes, when we try to help them and things like that, they can get into a learned helplessness state. So you need to be very alert to that. The idea is to empower them. No, and like Lao Tzu said, teach a man how to fish rather than just give him a fish. So negative interactions are more powerful than positive, we all know that. Somebody shows a face at me today, I will remember that for 10 days. If somebody says I look beautiful today, I'll forget it tonight. So negative interactions are more powerful, and negative experiences sift into implicit memory. They go and sit there. So you need to overcome that with your positive memory. So look for what you need to learn to do to improve your brain is, you must learn how to take in the good. There's a lot of good around us. A hot cup of coffee, tasty upma, all of these are good things. So learn to take in the good. Look for positive facts, let them become positive experiences. Savor the positive experience, sustain it. You have to work on it. You have to sustain that nice feeling. So when you sit with a cup of coffee, especially in the morning, that's when most of us do sustain a good experience. We sit down, we relax, we look at the garden or we read a paper or something, and only the paper is full of rubbish. But, so we do something, or you just pray or you listen to some slokas or something like that. Most of us do that. We sustain that good feeling and savor it for a few seconds. You must feel it in your body and emotions. I told you the brain and the body are linked. Intensify it. Now at the end of this, I'm going to take you through a little exercise where you will be doing that. Sense and intent that the positive experience is soaking into you. Okay? And what are the kind of good you be taken. The small pleasures of ordinary life. We just sort of rush around like as if there's no time for anything. Satisfaction of attaining your goal, recognizing accomplishments, feeling grateful, contented, fulfilled. Things are alright, nothing is wrong, there is no threat. Feeling safe, feeling strong, the peace and relief of forgiveness. Being included, being valued, being liked, respected, loved by others. The good feelings that come from being kind, fair, generous. When you feel love for other people or other creatures, recognizing your positive character traits, and a spiritual realization. So while it's good to take in the good, because it rights an unfair imbalance. When you have the negativity bias, it's an unfair imbalance. So it corrects that. And it gives oneself today the caring and support one should have received as a child. So what are you doing? You're nurturing yourself. You're cherishing yourself. And you're appreciating yourself. It may sound like it's a very obvious thing to do. But let me tell you, 90% of us do not do this to ourselves. We sometimes do it, and not sometimes, we're all the time doing it for other people, especially the women. And we hardly ever sit down and really nourish ourselves. You need to do it. Otherwise, you are not capable or fit to take care of anybody else. And it can bring in your missing supplies of love, strength, etc. And it can also help heal painful experiences. So all of us have a choice, whether to be in a responsive state or whether to be in a reactive state. So our true nature, again I reiterate, is peaceful, happy and loving. And if you want to cut down or avoid this, what should you do? First and foremost, spend time with your family. I know this is a very obvious thing which I'm saying. And you say, okay, what's new? What's happening? Today, lots of people are not spending time with their family. Whether it's for Rotary or for your work or for something. In the end, the family is neglected. So make sure that your family, one of the tips that I give, especially young IT professionals, they are the ones who are really in a mess today. And they're trying to do everything all the time and they get into real trouble. So I tell them, if you can't spend time with your wife at some other time, what you do is after dinner, both of you just go for a walk and talk as you're walking. You manage to get a little physical exercise, you spend time together, because people are not even having dinner together nowadays. It's all kept on the table, each one comes like on assembly line and it eats at different times. So you need to change that. Try to have at least one meal a day as a family. Try to do it. It may not work every day, but please try it. Socialize and laugh a lot. This is very important. This I think, especially if you are in Rotary, you are doing adequate, enough of it. Get adequate sleep. Another big no-no. Lot of people are not getting enough sleep. Now the US is a chronically sleep-deprived nation. So, don't mimic the US. And why are we losing our sleep? So some fellow in the US can make money. Because our boys are all staying awake in the night for the US time. So, whatever it is, try your best to get adequate sleep. Exercise. Now all those benefits are already known to most of you. That it helps lose weight, it manages chronic pain, it wards off infection, all that stuff you know. But look what happens to the brain after a 20-minute walk. Look at the lovely blood supply that your brain gets. And what happens? There are endorphins. Endorphins is the brain's natural morphine or the natural feel-good neurotransmitter. And the nerve growth factor. These are generated in the brain after a walk. And you find that it's almost addictive behavior like morphine or heroin. But the good news is this is good for you. So just a 20-minute walk is going to improve your brain, improve your relationship with your wife or husband, and keep you fitter. And eat right. Now, a healthy plate should necessarily have this proportion of various things. The green are the vegetables. This is whole grains. Then you've got healthy protein and you've got fruits. So that is that is whole grain. You should have some amount of healthy oils. A no-fat diet is bad for your brain, please understand. So don't go too low fat. The brain is fully layered with fat. It requires fat. Okay? And this is how it should look once you put the food on it. So mostly vegetables, less of your rice and bread and all that, a little bit of meat or beans or grains, and the rest of it can be anything you want. And somebody was asking about grain foods. These are the grain foods. So nuts are very good, walnuts and almonds. Berries, Brussels sprouts, ginger is very good, apples, watermelon, cabbage, lettuce. All of these are grain foods which are really good. Want to take a picture, is it? Go ahead. Not you. Okay, just take a picture.
No, this won't come.
Oh, it won't come. Okay, I'll send it to you. It's in the internet anyway. So, do good to others. And experience the brain and the immune system benefits of what is called as the helper's eye. So this is the next thing which will actually make your brain stay good. So there is something known as altruism. Now altruism is the selfless concern for the well-being of others. And I think all of us, when we join Rotary, we feel altruistic. That is why we are willing to give up something in order to help others. Now altruism is when you are there for somebody, when you volunteer. It is there when somebody is down and out and you put a hand on their shoulder and say, don't worry, I am there for you. It's when you donate. It's when you reach out. It's when you work together. It's when you give a gift to somebody. All of this is altruism. But altruism is something that is, for your information, hardwired in the brain. You're born to be altruistic. It is there naturally in our brains. But what you should learn to do is effective altruism, where you have to learn to use both your head and your heart in order to be generous. Generosity comes naturally, but you can also be stupidly generous. And altruism, what it does in the brain is, it stimulates, I showed you the parietal cortex and temporal cortex and all that. The posterior temporal cortex, there's one area which consistently lights up on fMRI when people think of, doing some generous act, or when they feel they should do something to help somebody. Every time somebody thinks like that, that part lights up. So there is a center in your brain for altruism. And what has happened is, both with love and hate, the same area lights up. But after that, the connections which go for love are different, the connections which go for hate are different. So even your jihadi there is an altruism there. Because what is happening is, I believe I am helping you when I take you and make you a suicide bomber. If I am an ISIS person, I believe I am taking somebody, because they really believe they are helping. You should think about it. Because they fund the family, they do all that, so that they can send their youngsters to go and blow themselves up with a bomb. So altruism can also be done in the wrong way. So you need to have the effective altruism, and because we are naturally wired for it. And why are we wired for it? Because altruism is all this, volunteering, mentoring. Mentoring is a wonderful form of altruism because you are assisting somebody, you are helping somebody. And of course when you bring about social change. So, but why do people help? I'll be done in about 5 minutes. She looked at the watch first. The biological aspect is to help people related to us. You see yourself as being a universal, you're one with the others. Neurologically, the pleasure centers of the brain are stimulated. And cognitive, you want to feel better by relieving your own distress. Okay? So, how do you cherish, nourish and nurture your brain? Sleep 8 hours at night, eat right, move as much and as often as possible even if you cannot exercise. They did that to us in the pets. They made us walk a lot. In fact, on the first day, my pedometer said we walked 5.3 kilometers inside itself. So exercise at least 3 hours a week, bond with your family, socialize with friends and others, and the last one is very important. Have quiet time once a day, at least for 10 to 15 minutes. There is a beautiful thing by Dr. Spencer Johnson saying, 1 minute for myself. So like that, keep one slot for yourself where you do only what you want, especially the women. Override the negativity bias, take in the good, be grateful. I do a lot of workshops and I recommend that I write a gratitude diary every day, and I recommend everybody does it because it's a wonderful practice. Write 3 things you're grateful for every single day into a book. And different things. Keep on writing. When you feel depressed, open that book, your depression will vanish. Live life mindfully, savor the good in your life. Think good, be good, do good to others, enjoy the helper's high, but guard against compassion fatigue. Understand that. You can sometimes just get too tired by being too good. Love and forgive yourself and believe that fundamentally you're a good person and you're doing your best in your given circumstances. So taking in the good is like a pit stop to replenish yourself. It's good for us, it's good for others, it's good for the world. Accept you are fundamentally a good person and keep taking in the good. And hardwire happiness in your soul by taking it in, passing good experiences and turning them into lasting inner strength. So look for good facts, savor the experience and let it soak in. And last but not least, learn to breathe properly. Interestingly enough, many of us don't breathe properly. So before we close, I would just like 2 more minutes. Now I want all of you to please sit straight, put your hands on your laps. Okay, put away anything you're holding in your hands. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath and relax. Take a deep breath and relax. Take a deep breath and relax. Feel a warm ripple of relaxation roll down from the top of your head to the tip of your toes. Enjoy the feeling of relaxation. Think of something good which has happened to you today or in the last 1 week. Just one thing. Relive that experience. Just go through that experience again. Recognize all the good feelings you had when you were undergoing that experience. Savor it. Make the colors brighter, the sounds louder. Smell it, taste it. Let it really soak into you. And just feel that good feeling again. And tell yourself, you're a good person. You're okay.